How does Rfactor 2 compare to iRacing? Physics, graphics, user experience? Is it better? Is it worse? Who stole the money from my purse? Gamer Muscle did, from people becoming members of Gamer Muscle videos and promptly receiving absolutely no value for their money. First things first, the most important component of a racing simulator, and I would say racing games, the handling and the physics, Rfactor 2 absolutely destroys iRacing in this regard. Cars in Rfactor 2 are much more forgiving to drive. They allow you to actually push over the limit and bring it back, with you being able to catch quite aggressive slides. Rfactor 2 allows you to overdrive, maybe too much at times with certain cars. I mean, this Radical SR3 is incredibly slidey. I'd say much more slidey than a real Radical SR3 would be. But it allows you to actually push and overdrive and be slower, whereas iRacing really doesn't allow you to properly overdrive. And once you get onto the tyres and once you really do start getting onto the limit of iRacing's limit is basically always drive under the limit or drive into a sort of power slide that you really don't correct, and you've preemptively put it into a weird power slide, and that's it. Whereas Rfactor 2 allows you to really be more active with the cars, dance with the cars, modulate the brake, modulate the throttle, rotate the cars mid-corner, and play with the vehicles in ways that you just, if you do that in iRacing, you're going to have a really, really bad time. So the raw underlying handling and drive and what you'll do as a driver in Rfactor 2 is just on another level compared to iRacing. Though Rfactor 2 is obviously not as good as the original Assetto Corsa. Obviously, everyone knows that. Even Max Verstappen knows that. Raw handling and drive then, Rfactor 2, clear winner. All those iRacers obviously agree with me. I've enlightened them, and they're totally not completely brainwashed into iRacing's physics, and will not vehemently defend iRacing, despite the fact that you literally have to have some form of concussion to believe that that's how real cars drive. Great, that's half the audience gone. So, well, they've gone now, so I don't need to be positive about iRacing, but a positivity of iRacing, or a positive thing, would be its graphics compared to Rfactor 2. iRacing has much more consistent graphics quality. The tracks are generally better quality, the skybox is better, it uses your graphics card and CPU better than Rfactor 2 does. You'll find like triple screen and VR generally works better in iRacing than Rfactor 2, which is a surprise because iRacing is pretty dated in many ways and not as well optimized as other more modern video games. So we're kind of both these games are competing with each other in a battle to lower the bar. But yeah, you'll find Rfactor 2 does have some tracks and content that looks absolutely fantastic and does at times look better than iRacing, but on average, in your average play experience of these games, iRacing will look better than Rfactor 2 and run better than Rfactor 2 does. Sadly that's the case. Hopefully they start making more tracks and content that looks nice for Rfactor 2, and hopefully they update some of the stuff that's included in Rfactor 2 so it's at a higher standard. I would say in Rfactor 2 actually, if they replaced the skybox with something that looked better, that would have a massive effect on the feel of it, because the clouds and skybox look so bad in Rfactor 2, it really makes everything look pretty bad. So graphics, I'm handing that over to iRacing. Now, a crucial thing when it comes to online racing, netcode and car contacts and all the lark damage and all that stuff related to the online racing experience. Sadly, iRacing is terrible in this regard, and that's it, the iRacers have definitely gone now. There's a really weird meme that iRacing has great netcode and the online racing, and it's like, okay, it does have the online rank system, and you can get races, and you can race close, and things do look good. Superficially, things are very smooth looking, apart from the cars bouncing up and down. You know what I mean if you've played iRacing. Superficially, iRacing netcode does look better, but what you'll find when you play Rfactor 2 is you can actually have car contacts that are totally reasonable contacts that you would have in real life without it causing your car to fly off the track or get stuck on another vehicle, or really weird things to just happen from the smallest of contacts. Now, Rfactor 2's netcode, unfortunately, is not perfect. You do still get disappearing cars, warping cars, weird contacts. You do get problems, as you get problems in iRacing. But, crucially, your average race situation and what happens on average most of the time when you play, the contacts are way better in Rfactor 2, and the netcode and how the contacts operate enable much closer, much more exciting, aggressive and nuanced racecraft and battling. Situations occur in Rfactor 2 which are normal, just side by side, a little tappy, little bit of a battle, that you would guaranteed be race over situations in iRacing. So much so that iRacing, if you play it a lot, basically just turns into hot lap racing game, let the other car go past, don't bother racing them. Now, strategically, often you don't need to race someone. Strategically, you might just let someone go past. But often, you might want to, especially in the sprint race format, which is what most people are doing on iRacing most of the time and what most people will be doing in Rfactor 2, in a sprint race format, you actually want to be doing some aggressive driving, some defending, some attacking, not outright blocking, not outright punting, but you know what I mean. You want to have a bit of active driving there. And iRacing really doesn't support that and really punishes you if you try and drive a bit more aggressive. Rfactor 2, you can relax, you can have some nice bits of contact, like those cars there. And funnily enough, in Rfactor 2, when someone does a move up the inside of you or drives into you, it's more likely to affect them than it is to affect you. Whereas in iRacing, if someone does a move or like rear ends you, the chance of it being game over are very, very high. You have to be hyper aware of what other drivers are doing, hyper aware of the next smoothing and invisible contacts in iRacing, whereas you can actually just chill out and relax in Rfactor 2 because it's just so much better for netcode and specifically car contacts. Now, iRacing does beat out Rfactor 2 in terms of car damage visually from contacts and bits of bodywork falling off, but again, the damage that you get in iRacing is totally arbitrarily and massively affected by the network smoothing and invisible contacts, to the point where it's a complete dice roll for you can flip over a vehicle and have no damage at all, or be tickled by a car, or not even touched by a car, but iRacing will terminally damage your vehicle. I've not had that problem in Rfactor 2, and believe me, that is a very frustrating thing to happen. Though the visuals do look better for that in iRacing with body parts on the track. Car parts can fall off vehicles in Rfactor 2, so you still have a bit of that, it's just not as spectacular as iRacing. But yeah, Rfactor 2 massively wins for the car contact component of netcode, though if it visually looks a little bit worse than iRacing, functionally it's a million times better. Now, one thing that iRacing again does really beat Rfactor 2 out on is how many people are on it at any point in time. There are way more people playing iRacing, and there's a lot more series running at any hour on iRacing with a bunch of different cars. Formula Ford, GT3, F4, F3, they're always, almost all times of the day, going to have at least 2 splits. Whereas at the moment in Rfactor 2, you basically have the hourly rookie races and then the sort of bi-hourly more advanced races. And obviously it's new days with this new beta and this new rank system, so it's quite popular now. It seems to be picking up popularity a little bit with a lot of, I think, iRacing's ACC players playing Rfactor 2 because it's nice to play something different. But it's hard to know if in the long term Rfactor 2 will still have that user base, whereas iRacing is 15 billion years old. It feels that way, 15 years old, and has that user base there. Over the next 5 or 6 years, I'm sure you're still going to have those users there. So iRacing has a far more active and, as a result, more competitive, fleshed out online competitive space with more content that you can pick from. So iRacing wins there for choice of content and a number of things taking place that are active online, as opposed to the current limited selection in Rfactor 2. Sadly for you Rfactor 2 fans, you losers, I have another positive for iRacing here, and that of course is the general user experience in iRacing. Getting your wheel set up, getting the game going, launching into the session, the consistency of it all. Sadly, it's a lot better in iRacing than Rfactor 2. The Rfactor 2 menus, though not the worst, are a little bit of a chore to access. Dialing in your force feedback in Rfactor 2 is a bit of a weird thing to do. You know, the content variability in Rfactor 2 is really big. Different cars require different force feedback amounts of filter and settings on your wheel. The graphics settings as well in Rfactor 2 are a little bit janky. The stability of Rfactor 2 is nowhere near as stable as iRacing. You know, getting into a session is just much more consistent. It's much more pleasant in iRacing. If I was going to give a noob a sim to jump onto, iRacing they're going to struggle a lot less with than Rfactor 2. Given the 5, 15, 10 million reworks of the Rfactor 2 user interface, sadly it's still the case that it's not the most intuitive thing to access, and you probably will still need to edit an ini file at some point to get things desirable for you. Whereas in iRacing, a dribbling Apple user could probably get it up and running, which is good because you actually have to be a dribbling Apple user to be able to maintain playing iRacing, which is why it's a surprise that I still play iRacing, given that I don't use Apples. I don't even have an Apple phone. I'm an Android PC user, so I don't know what's wrong with me. Oh, I know what's wrong with me. The fact of the matter is, voice chat and the anger that you find in iRacing races, combined with the sheer number of them, is very entertaining for live streams, and also just fun when you're racing, when you hear someone screaming and shouting at each other. That using iRacing as an international abuse telephone is great. I enjoy that. I like Americans being racist towards me for being British doing oval racing. I find that hilarious, and unfortunately that's not supported in Rfactor 2. There's no voice chat there, and the audio in Rfactor 2 as well. I mean, voice is part of audio. The audio in Rfactor 2 as well is not as good, generally speaking, as iRacing. So iRacing wins out on general user experience, voice chat toxicity, and generally speaking, if you ignore the driving, the overall entertainment quality, even if it is from a somewhat ironic perspective, iRacing does win out there, sadly. Or, you know, so sorry fans of Rfactor 2 and the 3 iRacers still watching this. iRacing is easier to use and generally more entertaining in many ways. Maybe they could add voice chat to Rfactor 2. Come on Motorsport Games, you can add ranking, you can add voice chat. That would be fantastic and way better for my live streams. I can't be entertaining, so I rely on other people to produce the entertainment for me. That's a content creator tip right there. Now, coming towards the end of this fantastic video, and I will say you can't ignore the fact that iRacing is bloody expensive. Generally, you're going to have to spend about £350 a year if you're going to play iRacing properly and have access to a range of content rather than the base subscription content. A lot of people, of course, will be happy to just drive an MX-5, a Formula Ford, or God knows what else is included around the 5 tracks that seemingly loop all the time. Lime Rock Park, Laguna Seca, Summit Point Raceway. It's fine, you can enjoy that, but the fact is, if you're going to play iRacing for any length of time, people will spend probably around about $350 a year for the first few years. Maybe $250, I don't know. You could spend less, but you know what I mean. iRacing's costing upwards of $200 plus a year, whereas with Rfactor 2, at the moment, you could get it for like a couple of quid off a website and access this content that's in the rookie stuff for a couple of quid. Absolute bargain madness, considering that, as I say, the racing is and the car contacts and stuff, it does a lot of stuff better than iRacing. Though, if you then start getting into the DLC for Rfactor 2, Motorsport Games are trying to compete with iRacing on more expensive content. Personally, if you've got the ranking online system and if you know you're going to be doing lots of racing, I don't mind spending £12, £15 on tracks and cars. If you're going to be spending hundreds of hours for that £12, it's still good value for money. The problem I find with iRacing isn't the overall cost, and yes, that is a radical on fire. Cooked radical driver. You don't get that in iRacing. 10 out of 10 for Rfactor 2. Drivers on fire. That's because this game's got 1960s cars, so they had to put that feature in there. Got distracted there by the man on fire. The problem isn't the cost, it's that you don't know that you're going to be able to get that value for money out of it in the first place. And the presentation of making out that you're not going to spend a lot of money, and that the whole design of the game is geared around the fact that you probably will end up spending a lot of money. It's really sort of Machiavellian and disingenuous marketing, I find, personally. That rubs me the wrong way. So, you know, if you're getting loads of time out of the content you've bought, even if it's 30 quid for a car and a track, but you're getting 100 hours out of that, bloody fantastic value for money, I think. And actually, on the subject, what really rubs me up the wrong way is when people go, well, it's the price of a coffee, or it's cheaper than real motorsport. It's like, yes, it's a video game. Of course these things are cheaper than real stuff where you've got a staff employed to do something and you're using consumables, or a real track with marshals and real tyres. Of course it's cheaper than a hyper-inflated, over-expensive real-world activity like coffee drinking or go-karting or motorsport. It should be cheaper. What is wrong with people? I don't know. Well, we're all playing driving simulators, so I mean, I shouldn't throw stones at my own little glass house, because I'm an idiot as well. I'm the biggest idiot. My whole life revolves around this. Dear God, I'm going to go and hold my breath for 10 minutes. Right. Well, we're basically done. At the end of the day, the point is you can play both iRacing and Rfactor 2, and I quite enjoy them both for different reasons, and I like having a mixture of things to be able to play, and this is why I'm super excited about the ranking system for Rfactor 2. I'm still going to play iRacing. I'm really excited for LFM coming to AC as well, and other systems, and I quite like the ranked multiplayer in Forza Motorsport. Greatest thing with Rfactor 2 though, as I say, you can pick it up for cheap and you can try it out for much cheaper than you can try iRacing out for. Same with AC and these other things. They're cheap to try, and that's good because it's less exclusionary for people that just happen to have less money. And I want more people to find the despair and misery from sim racing that I have. I've ruined my life, you can ruin yours. Thank you for ruining your day by watching this video and learning probably nothing. Well done. I will see you in a video very soon, and maybe for some live streaming. Follow us on Twitch and Twitter. I hate social media. Don't follow us anywhere, but if you do, you can. Until the next one, guys, thank you for watching. Happy tea drinking. Take care. Goodbye.